Minister, I share your vision, and I very much look forward to working with you on all of the things that you cited in your statement. But I know you'll understand there are a number of pressing questions that I want to ask you. And the first one, Minister, is about the 8,000 students who did their Leaving Cert in 2018 and 2019 who were severely disadvantaged because of the CAO access points increased so drastically for subjects. And you'll know, for instance, the early childhood care and education at the Technological University in Dublin increased by 24 points. So my question to you on that is, what have you done to create a level playing field for those students, and what do you say to those prior Leaving Cert students who are now left at home with no college places?
Thanks very much, Deputy Conway-Walsh, and I look forward to working with you as well. I'm very conscious that this pandemic disadvantaged every year group. So you could quite rightly point to students in 2020 who've gone through a very stressful year, equally students in 2019. I took legal advice, and I won't use your time on this, I took legal advice in relation to this matter. It wasn't possible on the basis of legal advice to ring fence places and the likes for 2019, and therefore the best legal and operational route available to me was to massively expand in an unprecedented level the number of college places available. That did result in a lot more people getting into college. I accept that you can point to examples in 2019 and 2020 and previous years as well. I would also point out, though, that the government, or the then government, wasn't the first group of people clamouring for the Leaving Cert to be cancelled. There was a cross-party consensus, almost, that the Leaving Cert couldn't continue, and we obviously had to respond to that on the grounds of public safety. We put in place the very best system that was possible. So we can't have it every way. I'm confident that we have the most robust system that we could, but I'm very conscious of the individual impact it's had on people.
And Minister, as well as the 6,100 students who got upgrades last week, there are many more thousands who were squeezed out of places and preferred courses due to the errors in the algorithm, which led to 7,943 being awarded a higher place. What plans do you have for those students, and how can you ensure fairness, even at these late stages, for those students? I think there's a whole cohort of students there. I know some of them, and you probably know some of them yourself, who are sitting at home at the moment feeling very disadvantaged, and a real sense of injustice and unfairness.
I noted your statement last week, and you rightly put it up to me in a very reasonable and constructive way to provide places to make sure every student who was wrongly downgraded by the calculated grades error got a place, and they did. And maybe we could be having a different conversation if they didn't. You're pointing out the fact, which is not an unreasonable point, that there are obviously some students who also got an upgrade. And the very honest answer is the answer delivered by the Chief Inspector last week at the press conference in Marlborough Street, which is, we have a long-standing precedent in this country, decades old, that nobody gets downgraded. And short of rerunning the entire process, which I don't think anyone would advocate for, there is no way of determining the impact of that. So again, the government in a pandemic thought that this was the fairest system to put in place. Is it perfect? No. But I am encouraged by the fact that more people than ever before got places, more people got their first choice. And now, with the latest error that we had to deal with, and we're not expecting to have to respond to, we've still managed to get everybody in. But I accept there are anomalies, but there is a precedent every single year that you can't get downgraded in relation to the Leaving Cert. No, and I'm not
asking about getting downgraded, but I feel that there's a whole lot of people there in the middle who didn't get upgraded, didn't get the text, got the text say they weren't impacted, and they're sitting at home in a really bad state at this time.
Well, I really hope, and I should say, I'm sorry, I don't want to use your time, but this idea of that people are sitting at home in a really bad state, I mean, we should focus on that. I mean, what I'd say to everybody today is there are so many routes to getting to where you want to get to, and we need to be able to promote and highlight that. There's more people starting university this year than any year before, ever. But on top of that, there are many, many other routes to get to where you want to get to. And I was talking to a student who missed out on UCD last year by a few points, did 1 year in further education training, got straight in to UCD at round 0 this year. So I would encourage those students in a pandemic year to look at the full range of options available to them.
Okay, Minister. Minister, there's thousands of students and parents who have paid very substantial amounts of money for accommodation that they will now not use. What are you doing to ensure that those parents and students get their money back?
Yeah, look, this is an important issue, and my colleague, the Minister for Housing, met with USI in relation to this, and of course USI are engaging with me on this on a very regular basis, I can assure you. There's two parts to that, to the question and the answer. There's the students who live in college-owned accommodation, and my very clear message to that sector is I expect refunds to be issued in those cases. And in fairness, I don't need to lecture them on that, pardon the pun. They're already doing that. So I've seen in Galway, I think I've seen in Limerick, people coming forward and saying, if you're not using the accommodation, we're going to give you a refund.
Yeah.
And that
it's
should
important
happen
that they do it timely, that they do it quickly.
I fully agree with that.
Money back
and can I just say, and I know you'd agree with me on this, on the private,
Yes.
on the private owners, they need to show a bit of decency here.
Yes.
And there does need to be decency, and I'll continue to work with the Minister for Housing on that.
Please, if you could. Now, in terms of the appeals, 12,300 students have appealed their grades. Now, some of them will have been upgraded in the corrections, but some won't. When will students have the results of those appeals? And are you confident that there's enough places to meet the successful appeals and also the successful outcomes from the court cases that are in the system at the moment?
So on the issue of the appeals, it is a matter for the Department of Education, but my understanding is that process is due to conclude this month. I know everyone would like to conclude it as quickly as possible. I don't have a specific date, but perhaps the Department of Education can give you one. In relation to my job and my department's is, if people have a successful appeal, will we provide them with a place? And the answer is we'll go through the exact same process we do every year of making sure anybody who has a successful appeal gets an offer, and ideally gets it this year. And I'm very optimistic on the basis of the process I've just gone through, and that there's a real willingness and ability in the system to try and do that.
Just back to the laptops, Minister. The colleges and universities are using the SUSI criteria to distribute the laptops. I don't think that's fair, and I know I asked you at a very early stage, and you said that wouldn't be part of the criteria. I'm particularly concerned about people on very, very modest incomes. Many of them are frontline workers. Can you talk to the colleges? Can you get them to reassess that and not base it on eligibility for SUSI? Please.
Yeah, no, thank you for raising that with me. I mean, we've obviously given the universities discretion, or the higher education institutions, on the basis that they would know best who needs them. But I'm very clear that there shouldn't be a rigid application to, you can only have one if you have a SUSI grant. So I'll follow that up, and if you have examples, I'm happy to talk to you offline on it too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.